Hey YouTube, Coppersan, you thanks for tuning in again. In this video we are comparing old school MapleStory to the current MapleStory. We're comparing things like grinding, questing, party quest, what gear was like back then. Let's jump right in. Back in the day, everyone would fight Mushmon to find those valuable ilbies or perhaps a nice scroll that you could sell. Mushmon was crazy strong back then and very difficult to take down. She used to be around level 50 I believe and had a crazy amount of HP. She used to spawn only every 55 to 60 minutes after she was killed, making it very difficult for anyone to track her death timers, unless you actually were the one killing her. She was also in a hidden map, so not everyone knew where to find her. Mushmon nowadays can easily be killed with just a few basic attacks. She still drops scrolls though, but no one really uses those anymore. Back in the day, everyone was hanging out at Pyrion using Omog boards to advertise their wares. You could sell panlets, work gloves and glow for attack 60% scrolls for a lot of mesos. With a lot of meso I mean around 2 to 3 million for the glove attack scrolls if I remember correctly. That's what the price they were for in my server. Work gloves were around 60k each and panlets sold for about 300k mesos. Back then 2 billion mesos was the max, so that was a lot of money. After that everyone moved to the free market to set up those shops to sell their wares. I remember being super annoyed when people were stealing 2 spots instead of 1. Also the amount of time I spent browsing all the stores hoping someone would accidentally set the wrong price for an item is uncountable. There was also a system where you could sell items for NX Cash in Maple Global, which was a nice way of getting some NX without actually buying it. Nowadays the free market is empty and people use the auction house to trade. While it is definitely more convenient, it does leave less room for error and errors are spotted earlier as you can directly search for the entire auction house without having to spend NX or mesos to buy those alls. Nice thing though is that your sales do stay up when you log out. I remember being so annoyed when I disconnected when I had my shop up. No one leveled up without party quests in old school Maple, mainly because they were one of the fastest ways to level up and usually pretty fun unless you had some really interesting people in your party. You did curling party quests, trained for a few hell levels, then you did Ludi PQ, Orbis PQ, Ludi Maze PQ, or you traded wins with Monster Carnival. Party quests are still a thing in the current MapleStory, well at least they still exist, but they aren't really active anymore. Trading is a lot faster than party quests, so not many people actually go there. There are though a lot of party quests for higher level people. For example, there's a party quest at level 210 which you have to do to gather arcane symbols, and that one is quite popular, it's part of your dailies. So there are still party quests, they just not until level 210 basically. Dexless assassins were the powerhouses of old school Maple. If you really wanted to be at the top, you should go Dexless as an assassin and warrior, mages went luckless and archers went strengthless. People could only wear Maple items or certain special items that didn't require a secondary stat, and for the Dexless assassins this usually meant a sauna robe, a bamboo hat and a maple weapon. Nowadays this isn't really the case anymore because all classes only use 1 stat, so thankfully you don't have to use the dual stats anymore. Well, maybe except for Xenon who actually uses 3 stats. As a poor starting Mapler 14 years ago, I had to resort to walking around to get to the places I needed to be. The taxi was way too expensive for me, it's free now, but back then, 2k meso, can't spare that. I could easily spend 10 to 20 minutes walking all the way from Hennessy's to Pyrion or from Koenig City to the Ant Tunnel. Most maps were very big and the walking speed was slower as well. Also, only mages had teleport and assassins had flash jump if they had the 3rd job, the hermits. Nowadays the maps are a lot smaller and in Victoria Island there also are a lot less maps as well. And with every class having some sort of flash jump or teleport, getting somewhere is literally a walk in the park. And because hyper teleport rocks are available through the daily login quest now, who even walks anymore? Mounts also became way more available, but again people just usually use the teleport rocks or the training UI to teleport to places. So back in the good old days, it took forever to level up. Skills didn't hit that many monsters, didn't do that much damage, and they also didn't cover that much ground, so you had to move around a lot just to hit stuff. You also had less HP and MP, so training was more difficult in general. So what did a lot of people do when they got bored of grinding? They did quests. Most quests consisted of collecting stuff or traveling to talk to different NPCs. Most quests back then were actually pretty hardcore. They had some hardcore requirements, like defeating 999 monsters in the Temple of Time and collecting an unholy amount of zombie lupin dolls. Most quests got made a bit easier now. For example, Nap and That Honey drops a lot more now than it does in old school Maple. While not that many people do regular quests, there are a lot of blockbuster quests containing epic animated cutscenes and a well-written storyline that you can follow, advancing the actual plot in the game. So people still do quests, just not the regular quests anymore, only those blockbuster type quests, which are pretty cool to be honest. 10 attack loaves were considered pretty decent. If you were very fond, you got a 21 attack brown work loaf. With the introduction of Leaf, if I recall correctly, timeless weapons were introduced. These level 120 weapons could level up alongside you. Now how epic was that? People usually went for snowshoes, and of course the Deckless Assassin crowd went for the sauna robe, bamboo hat or maple helmet. People would use 60% scrolls to enchant their gear, and if you were really daring you could use a 10% scroll on a weapon, hoping that the first scroll would work and then you could sell the weapon for a nice amount of msea. Then with the introduction of 30 and 70% scrolls, things got a little bit more risky, as there was a 50% chance to destroy your item if the scroll failed. There was no such thing as spell traces, and Star Force wasn't even a thing back then. Nowadays no one booms their items anymore with scrolling, only with Star Forcing. And we also have flames which give random stats. Before, items could get random stats, but it was a very limited range. For example, the base attack of a weapon was 3, then it could go from 1 to 5. I remember using the maker skills to create items and hope for a better base stat so I could sell it for just a bit more. Back in the day it was super easy to pick a class. You were either a warrior, mage, thief or archer. Later the Knight of Signets were released, but they could only go to level 120, they were more of a side thing really. Pirates were quite a niche class as well, like not that many people played it. They were pretty awesome though. Most classes were pretty unique though, and it felt very different to play for example a Dragon Knight or a Marksman or an Assassin. The class roster has changed quite a bit since then. Maple now has over 40 different classes, with a new class being released this summer. Most classes have mobility skills now and attacks that hit a large part of the screen, especially with the release of 5th Job a couple of years ago. I just realized 5th Job is already quite old. Oh man, I'm so old. No worries, people are still sitting on chairs and Hennessy's doing nothing. They're still hennos, man. Only thing that did change is the way that chairs look nowadays. Before I had a blue chair, a relaxer, and that's it, maybe the big chair from NLC. You could also get special chairs from the Gachapon, which is like a moon chair or a music chair, which was super epic. Bosses also dropped chairs at one point and they looked quite cool. But for some reason we went from sitting on a small moon to sitting on a massive tulip that covers half the map. Or what about sitting on the freaking sun? Sitting really has evolved over the years, but hey, no complaints here. So if you are an old school player and you still are playing MapleStory, what do you find that has changed the most in these years? Let me know in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching and see you next time.